So I'm joined by two gentlemen which are well known to the Hong Kong trail running community, Will Hayward and John Ellis, and delighted today to talk about a new initiative that you've both been very involved with, which is the Tinworth Trail. So thank you both for joining us. Will, maybe starting with you, do you just want to tell us what is the Tinworth Trail?
Thanks, Steve. Great to be with you. So the Tinworth Trail is a 92-kilometer trail stretching across Hong Kong from the far northeast to the far southwest. Um, so it runs right from the border with Shenzhen at Chada Kok and ends up at Tai O on Lantau Island, which you get to via minibus and MTR. So a new challenge for Hong Kong, an unofficial trail. So it's designed to be like the famous four trails. This one is not ratified or certified by the Hong Kong government. Exists purely as an unofficial suggested hike on a website. But we put it together with the four trails in mind. And so it has a lot of the hallmarks. It's got sections. We've got all sorts of things that we'll chat about to be kind of like a fifth trail.
Great.
Brilliant. And Will, yeah, well, I mean, tell us where did the idea come from?
So yeah, it was a couple of different reasons. Obviously, it's called the Tinworth Trail after our good friend Nick Tinworth, and so yeah, so part of it was definitely wanting to kind of keep alive the kind of both the memory, but I guess more so the kind of the spirit of Nick. So for those that don't know him, Nick Tinworth was a long-time Hong Kong resident, grew up here, and was really central, I think, to the kind of development of the Hong Kong trail running community. Was someone that just very naturally, some people just kind of take the lead in organizing communities, and his profession was kind of social media communication. So I think he just very naturally, as he got into trail running, and he got into it quite early, he just very naturally set up a lot of kind of initiatives that really brought the community together and really developed the community when it was quite small. And he did that in lots of ways. He set up the Hong Kong Trail Running Facebook page, which now has like over 11,000 members. He obviously set up with some of his friends, Steve Carr, Mike Ormiston. He set up Racebase, who organized obviously some iconic Hong Kong races, Country of Origin, Nine Dragons, to name a few. And so, yeah, so as someone who, very, sadly left us a couple of years ago at the start of the pandemic, far too early, I've always kind of wanted to partly kind of celebrate him and his legacy, and also partly just, keep his kind of spirit alive, and also his knowledge of the trails like alive, and make sure that, new generations of trail runners get to enjoy the trails that he championed. So definitely part of it came from that. And then part of it came from just kind of randomly one day in my office kind of thing. You have kind of strange ideas sometimes when you're a bit bored, maybe shouldn't say that. Just thinking, we got four trails in Hong Kong. Why four? Like, why not more? And if there was more, where would a fifth one go? And started looking at a map and started saying, well, you'd want to have places that weren't on the four trails. And I've always loved kind of Robin's Nest, close to the Shenzhen border. I've always loved Tai To Yan, Great Ridge between Fanling and Kadori Farm. Loved Lantau. And so just started kind of sketching, really. And then, quite early on, those two things kind of came together that, well, if we were going to do a trail, perfect name would be the Tinworth Trail. And I was, working with Steve Carr, quite early on. We kind of developed that a bit, and just kind of took it from there.
Very nice. And I guess talking a little bit about Nick. What was he like as a personality?
So the two of you knew Nick very well. I met him very briefly. One of my very first night trail runs in Hong Kong was led by Nick, and I just found him very, very inclusive. He was really good at bringing people together in that social run and making sure nobody got lost. And he just came across as a very friendly person. So I didn't know him anywhere near as well as the two of you, though. So, Will, he was a good friend of yours. Would you like to tell us a bit about him?
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, I got to know him largely after he became ill. So like you, Steve, I kind of got to know him through some of the night runs, and probably I think that's where I met you, actually, Steve. Uh, so yeah, so he was incredible at organizing events to just allow the community to kind of develop and grow and meet each other. And I do say, actually, everyone I know in trail running, I basically met through Nick, because it was through, like, those night runs were the first thing I did when I came back to Hong Kong 2017. And through the people I met at the night runs, I met everybody else. So that's why I always feel very fondly about those kinds of experiences that he created. And then, yeah, I kind of got to know him really just before and then after he became ill. And so I was just incredibly inspired by a guy that was, going through some very difficult, experiences, and really wanting to, not be defeated by them, wanting to, be very visible, to be kind of inspiring to other people who are also, might also be going through things. Really just demonstrating that, someone who just wanted to live his life, and did, incredibly, well, and yeah, inspiringly. Someone that always had the time for you. Like, he was going through all sorts of things himself, but he was always keen for a coffee, keen for a walk, for a hike, and obviously at different stages of his illness, sometimes he was, really able to be very active, and sometimes he wasn't. We had a great experience where, he really trained hard, and we did the Gurkha Trailblazer with him, and that was incredibly inspiring. Even though, the time that we did it, was much slower than certainly his kind of earlier speeds. But it was really funny that we were coming down this final hill, and I made the mistake of saying, "Oh, we could come in under like 2 hours or something." And it was a completely meaningless, arbitrary, point. And all of a sudden, we were like going about twice the speed that we had been. Yeah, just to, got to come in under the cutoff. So just someone really warm, and just someone to be celebrated. Yeah,
Mm.
I've always really felt.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I got to Hong Kong in 2010, and yeah, sort of got straight into trail running. And I think, when people sit and look at trail running in Hong Kong today, they see this, really big, very popular, very vibrant community. And back then I think it was still sort of growing. It was still sort of, I wouldn't say infancy, but very far from what it was today. And there's a number of characters even back then who I think have helped it grow and to shape it and to bring it into this fabulous community that we celebrate today. And yeah, he was one of those guys. My very first races, he was always there, with his headphones in, his team green top, and very competitive runner. Kicked my ass a number of times, but always at the same time really supportive. Yeah, I also went to some of those weekly runs that he organized as well. He was just, one of those guys who was just a permanent fixture of it, always encouraging people at every single event, whether it was a race or a run or training, encouraging people to join in. And yeah, I just don't think the community that we have today would be anything like it is without people like Nick. And so I think it's fabulous what Will's done in terms of putting this together and making something that we can all celebrate and remember Nick with.
So you mentioned those night runs. I mean, another way Will's kind of keeping that legacy alive is with monthly Monday night trail running nightclub runs, which use Strava routes, which were created by Nick. So I think people can find those on Facebook just by searching for trail running nightclub. Um, but you're talking a bit about the Tinworth Trail, which people can find by just looking at tinworthtrail.com while I'm giving out web addresses. There's some very familiar bits, but there's also some bits which, personally, even though I've run in Hong Kong for about 5 years, I've never been on, like the very first section at the start. So, 90K, there's some kind of smooth, well groomed trails, but I understand there's some shiggy bits which were perhaps a favourite of Nick's as well. So, yeah, tell us a bit more about the actual trail.
Yeah, so I guess there's a few kind of principles involved. So one is that I definitely wanted to include some kind of key areas, as I kind of suggested before, that aren't covered by the other four trails. I guess to keep off the four trails. So one of the things I really like is that this trail only does about 3Ks of the MAC and less than 1K of the Lantau Trail. And so the other 88 are, not the four trails. So it's not like a trail which is actually 60% some other trail. Um,
Which is actually
uh,
pretty amazing. Like when you think of like how much the trails take up already, it's amazing you've been able to dodge and put together something very original.
yeah, it took some creative topography, notes, but and then yeah, obviously, so Nick is kind of famous for because he kind of came from like a hash house harriers background too. So just absolutely loved his kind of off trail shiggy kind of through the the bush. And so we definitely wanted to include some sections of that. And so we have about three, which are they're all quite well marked. They're very obvious trails that people do, but they're definitely going to slow people down. So the FKT for this trail is not going to be a quick one. And I'm pretty confident it's going to be the slowest of the five trails. I think people's times are going to be definitely slower than the Mac or the Wilson. Um, and then, so yeah, and then also, Nick really liked Lantau, so definitely wanted to get part of it on Lantau. I think a lot of people have said to me he really liked the King of the Hills race around Shamchang, which is
Mm.
kind of Western New Territories. And so the New Territories part of this route finishes in Shamchang. And although the route that we take, I think, is not really Keith's trail, but I think that's a nice little hat tip to Nick as well. But yeah, so I mean, basically, we were keen to start it as close as we could to the border with Shenzhen, to come as far northeast as we could. So it literally starts across the road from the police post
Oh
uh,
wow.
at Shadao Kok. So Shadao Kok is a little residential part of Hong Kong. There's a public housing estate in Shadao Kok, which is like the nicest public housing estate, well, the quietest, because you need a permit. It's like a buffer zone, so you need a permit to go through the police post to visit, or if you live in the housing estate. And so where we start is right next to the police post, essentially. So some people have said to me, "Oh, do you need a pass to start the trail?" The answer is no. It's entirely free to get to, but it's like the last bus stop before you go through that area. Um, and so yeah, so then we start, and the first thing we do is after a 600-meter run along the kind of village road is a pretty steep climb up about 400 meters. And so I think the first experience people are going to have on the Tinworth Trail is complaining loudly to the designers, and probably beginning to think maybe I'm not going to complete the Tinworth Trail, quite as quickly as I thought I was going to.
But having said that, at the top of that climb, I think, from what I remember, the rewards are pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So fantastic views out over kind of Shadow Cock, Starling Inlet, kind of looking over to kind of Lai Chi War and kind of Plover Cove area. And then on the other side, you're looking right over Shenzhen. So, you're seeing, residential buildings, and then, the mountains behind, just across the border. You could literally throw a stone at them. And so it's a really good tour. And for a lot of Hong Kong people that maybe stay a little bit south in Hong Kong, you get an incredible view over the first 10 Ks. You get a really good tour of just what's happening in Shenzhen, how big that urban area is, and the kind of the juxtaposition between kind of the Hong Kong hinterland, which is still pretty green, going up to the border, and then suddenly, just a couple of Ks away, Shenzhen and all its kind of enormity there is very striking, and yeah, some fantastic views.
Would you say Robin's Nest is your favorite part of the course, or what else is sort of up there?
Robin's Nest is definitely one of them. And, I'd been up Robin's Nest really just on a couple of races, but always thought it was a great area. And, one that, because it's on kind of the north side of Shattercock Road, like not one that I think a lot of people go to. So So yeah, so it was really, that was always in the plan to kind of start somewhere around there. Um, and yeah, so really enjoy that. It's a really nice ridge. So once you get up this climb, it's a really nice ridge. The first part of it is a bit shiggy, and yeah, it's going to be a little bit slow. But then you get onto a beautiful trail that kind of winds its way under a couple of hills. Um, and then also a principle is, so we've basically put the trail, reasonably the obvious way a trail would go, but there's always good places just off the trail, as there always is in trail running and hiking. So, for example, the peak of Robin's Nest is not precisely on the trail. It's about a 5-minute detour, but we would definitely advise people to take those detours and, go up to the top, see the view. And right the way through the trail, there are going to be all sorts of these little detours. And so actually, probably every person that does the Tinworth Trail is going to do it slightly differently. Because, for example, another part of it is we come from, near Kadori Farm, you go down to the village of Intongchai, and then you go up the back of Taimoshan. And you've got two choices there. You can go straight up, which is where most of the races do. But then you've also obviously got the famous waterfall walk. And yeah, when those waterfalls are flowing, they're absolutely beautiful. And so again, we would encourage anyone that wants to go the sideline and go through the waterfalls, do that. And then once you go through the waterfalls at the top, you reconnect to the main trail. So we certainly consider anyone that does that to have done the Tinworth Trail. So yeah, so there's various points at which people will be able to take little detours, side trips, and enjoy some beautiful scenery.
There's not a lot of urbanization. I mean, the good thing about it is, although it's like around 90K, you're in the country parks on the trails pretty much the whole time. But for someone doing it, I mean, obviously people are going to be doing it self-supported. There's a few spots where people can like almost pass a 7-Eleven or just do a slight detour. So I think after a few K, you pass through Funling. And then near the end of the New Territories, Kowloon sections, if you just detour like 200 meters and Suan Wan West, there's a 24-hour 7-Eleven. And then obviously you'll come out at Shan Sing anyway. So any kind of tips for people doing it for such a long distance, or even if they're doing it overnight, like in terms of supplies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And one that actually is organically kind of building up over time. So now that the trail is out there, actually we're discovering, people are saying, oh, there's a water fountain at this park, which is right beside where the trail goes. When I was, so the kind of development of the trail was, we basically had it plotted around April, and a couple of us, Tim Marchand and I, along with JP Santa, although JP wasn't quite as diligent as Tim and I, so he didn't quite do all the sections, but Tim and I at least did the whole thing over a couple of weekends. And it was probably 95% the way that it's ended up. But since then, we've spent a lot of time and invited a lot of people out to come running with us. And basically each time we do a section, somebody new says, oh, you should know about this other thing. So the short answer is that the website has information about all the places to get food, to get drink, toilets, and we'll continue to update that. And I think that'll just be an ongoing evolution. So for example, just recently, I was doing the first couple stages with a group, and Vic So, another very good friend of Nick's and a long-time Hong Kong runner, has just pointed out that actually, as we get to the end of the first stage, which is, so this is, you start at Shadowcock, you go over Robin's Nest, and then you come down to a village, and we definitely knew there was a toilet there, so there was a water source. Wasn't not necessarily that great. Vic pointed out, actually, if you go 500 meters down the road, you get to this fantastic, very indigenous kind of corner store, which is very well stocked, has $5 Cokes, has lots of food, lots of drinks, and is open from like, I don't know, 8 in the morning till 10 at night. So really perfect for adventurers. So that's now marked on the trail, that store, Mameha. So the whole way through, actually, on the New Territory side, which is about 54 Ks, there's pretty constant sources for water, certainly for drinks and for food. So after that store, it's another 10 k's to Fanling. Then you've got Tatoyan. So a lot of people know Tatoyan, but that'd be pretty close to my favorite part of the whole trail. I mean, that ridge is just absolutely fantastic, and especially I like it the way if you do the Tinworth Trail in the way that it's articulated in the website. So you do it north to south, then you just keep going up and up and up and up and up, and the ridge just keeps getting better and better and better until you get to Tatoyan right at the end, and you get magnificent views out over Kai Kong Lang on the right and Taimoshan, in front of you. So that's incredibly spectacular. And then you come down to Kadori Farm, and then you get to the village of Intung Chai, and there's houses in the village that will sell you drinks as well. So as long as you're there during daytime, or there's the temple just before you start the trail up the hill. There's a temple, and that actually has drinks as well. And then you go over Taimoshan and down the other side, and then obviously Route Twist, you've got a couple of stores there too. So it's actually pretty good access to kind of food and drink, at least during daytime hours.
I guess even outside of daytime, if you bring, I guess, a flask or that has, I guess, one of those drinking straws. Yeah, I guess you've got options there with waterfalls, etc. too.
Yeah. And I think, and also, there are a few, kind of filtered water sources as well. So yeah. So the options are actually pretty decent.
Actually, what about the Lantau side? Can you do that sort of fairly well self-supported?
Yeah, Lantau is a little bit more complicated, but obviously, I mean that's true of any Lantau trail, right? So yeah, so there's basically the on the Lantau side. Well, let's take a step back. So the trail on the New Territory side finishes in Shamchang, which is a kind of urban area that's kind of between Chunwon and Tunmun. And from Shamchang, you look across and you see the bridges and you see Lantau Island right there. And so we were keen to get a connection. And, obviously Hong Kong trails have some good public transport connections. There's the MTR and the Wilson Trail. There's, in terms of four trails, there's the ferry going out to Moi Wo. But what we didn't have in Hong Kong trails for connections was a minibus. And, minibus is obviously absolutely central to
Very
Hong Kong.
iconic.
So we wanted to have a minibus connection. So from Shamchang, there's a 308M minibus which runs from 6 a.m. till 11 p.m. going to the Chingy MTR station about every 5 or 10 minutes. So you finish the New Territory side at the famous Roast Goose restaurant. That's the finishing point of that part in Shamchang. Then there's a 7-Eleven there that you can restock, and then you get the minibus to Chingy. Get the MTR out one stop to Sunny Bay, and then on the Lantau side, it's starting at Sunny Bay. So you have to resist the urge to go to Disneyland. Instead, you go quite nicely kind of under a road. There's one road that you need to cross. So obviously, people need to take care crossing that road, but the visibility is very good. So, as long as you're, careful, it's no problem at all. And then you basically start this series of hills going up towards Discovery Bay. And there you've got, so it's a couple sections. It's probably about 15 Ks to get to Pak Mong village at the bottom of the Olympic Trail. And at Pak Mong, there are toilets, and there's often, weekends and kind of times there are hikers. There are always people selling drinks there.
The guy with his esky.
Yeah, exactly. From Pak Mong, you've got then another trail that we wanted to get on, which again, people are going to absolutely curse us, is the long trail from Pak Mong that goes up, kind of curves around up to Lin Fa Shan, and then the Lantau Trail. And that's absolutely iconic trail. Nick did love that trail, I know. But people tend to like it going down and don't like it going up too much.
I'm just looking here. It looks like it's got about 700 meters of climbing in 4 or 5 Ks.
Yeah.
Looks fairly nasty.
It's just relentless. And
Yeah.
there's no part of it which is super steep, but it just keeps going and going and going. It's a little bit technical. So even if you want to try and move a bit faster, it's also a little bit challenging.
And then I guess you're getting up to almost near the top, getting towards, I guess, sort of sunset. You sort of take this right turn sort of down towards Tung Chung. That looks sort of pretty steep.
So then, yeah, so then from that trail, you join the Lantau Trail for about 800 meters,
Mhm.
and then just as you get to the huts of Sunset Peak, you take the right turn and go down, and that's the same turn as for Lantau Two Peaks, where
Gotcha, yeah.
you go down the Wonlong Hung Valley, and then yes, that's a steep descent. So you've spent all this time going all the way up this hill, and then you just then go straight back down again towards Tongchong.
And then I guess from Tung Chung, it's sort of it gets a little bit nicer from there. And what is it? Sort of a 15 kilometers of sort of slightly rolling, mostly flat around the coastline to get to Tayo.
Yeah, exactly. So for people that know Lantau Two Peaks, you basically go down the Wollongong Valley and as if you're finishing Lantau Two Peaks, and then as just as you enter kind of the outskirts of Tongchong, and in Lantau Two Peaks, you turn right to go into the kind of Tongchong
Town.
center. Here you're going to turn left, and you're going to go around the ancient trail, the Tungo Trail. That's kind of the ancient trail that goes all the way around to Tayo, which is through a number of villages. There's certainly a lot of places there. There are vending machines. There's a lot of people out selling drinks. There's a lot of toilets with water there too. And that lasts like about 13 k's. Is all rolling kind of ups and downs. When you're fresh, it's pretty nice running. It's mainly concrete, but it's very nice. Coastal track views out initially over kind of the airport, but then you turn around a corner, you lose the airport, and all of a sudden, you could be anywhere, just looking over the South China Sea. It's beautiful. When you're tired, those rolling hills do get a little bit, a
The
little bit,
drag.
yeah, they're bigger than they seem. Um,
Yep.
and so, but that's it's the nice thing is it's one of those trails that people have walked that trail for thousands of years probably since they've been living in those bays. So it's also it's even though it's concrete, it's a trail that's actually it's like a real trail that you can you really get the sense of people kind of traversing through this environment. Yeah,
Mhm.
for forever.
Can I ask, you've sort of finished it at Tayo. Technically, it's not the furthest southwest. You've got a 92K course here. If you'd finished in Fanlao, maybe you could have made it to the Magic 100. Was that important, or was that a consideration at any point?
That was a object of quite a considerable debate. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it finishes in Tayo, and yeah, certainly thought about going to Fan Lao, and there's a lot of reasons to think that might be a nice thing to do. The trouble, of course, with Fan Lao is that it's impossible to get out of. And so it was really for logistical reasons, and that again, thinking about if this is like the fifth trail, like the other four trails, the four trails they all have pretty clear starts and pretty clear ends, and each of them is
Yeah,
pretty easy to get to, pretty easy to get out of. You're mindful that people are going to finish this section. They might have just hiked one section. They might have done the whole thing over, 18, 20, 24 hours. We kind of felt like it would be good for them to be able to exit relatively easily.
yeah.
So you finish in Tayo, you get on a bus or a taxi, and and you can be away. There's lots of places to eat there. If you finish in Fan Lao, yeah, it's kind of it looks nice when you upload the Strava map, and you look at it later on. But for when you're exhausted and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I even get back to civilization?
5K schlep out. No, you're not the happiest in the world.
But we are quite happy for people to, informally extend the Tinworth Trail and do that. Maybe there'll be some kind of like, special bonus prize for anyone one that wants to do that. That's absolutely fine with us.
Nice.
So there's some parts of the trail which people will be familiar from races. I mean, some from race-based races, which Nick was one of the partners of. So Toto Yen, you went over in Nine Dragons, two directions. If you did the whole Nine
Mm.
Dragons, that uphill, long uphill on Lantau is the reverse of what you're doing in Country of Origin. I don't know if there was any special thought to using some of the trails from those races. But then there's some parts which are not in any races, like North Lantau's really beautiful. There's a long bit which is kind of rolling up and down some hills like dirt trail, which I don't know if race organizers can't get permits to use North Lantau, but I don't think any races go there, so that might be new for people. But John, what part of the trail excites you the most? Like, what would you think would be the most? It'll all be enjoyable if you go out and do it with friends, but what part of the trail excites you more?
I mean, for me, Will talked about Robin's Nest before, and it's the same for me. I hardly get out there. I've probably been there two or three times in races, and every time I've really enjoyed it. It's a tough climb, but once you get to the top, the views are just stunning. I love Taito Yan. It's sort of one of my favorite trails. Tried the going up the waterfalls, and then actually sort of taking a right turn. Just you think you're following maybe the North Face course, but you take this right turn, gets even steeper. But it's amazing. I think Will's done a great job here, where you think all of the trails, but he's found these little detours which people haven't really done before. And so even me, I've been running here for 12 years. I still was finding places that I haven't run before. That section in North Lantau as well, coming out of Sunny Bay, that was brand new for me. So yeah, I guess Robin's Nest, Taito Yan, the Tiger's Head section, they're all fantastic sections, and I can't wait to do them maybe in sections.
Yeah, the parts that were really fun to explore. So one of them is definitely that one John was just mentioning, going up Taimoshan. So
Mm,
as you go up, either through the waterfalls or you can go straight up. Normally, what people do, what the racers do, what the main trail does is it kind of goes up and kind of veers to the left and ends up at the
yep.
pagoda, which is at the end of the road coming down from Taimoshan on the Mac. And then you would turn, if you're going over the Mac, you would turn right and you'd go up the road, up past the communications, center at the top. But what I'd always noticed was that as you go up that trail, there's this kind of right turn, and I'd never had a reason to explore it. And as I was kind of looking at the maps, figuring out where this was going to go, I could see that actually there is something there. So we had a look there, and basically it's going to the top of Kudori Farm. Now, Kudori Farm is private land, and so there are big signs that say, don't go past this sign because it's private land. But before you get there, it's public land, and you turn. So you do this right turn, and then before you get to Kudori Farm, there's a sign saying Taimoshan, and it's an arrow pointing pretty much straight up, and because that's the direction you're going, and it's essentially a fire break that's going
Mm,
up the hill, and a trail that's going essentially straight up, and it's a magnificent trail. It's not that long; it takes about 10, 15 minutes, but gives you really beautiful aspect out over the northern New Territories that you don't really get from any other
yeah,
place.
the whole thing just opens up, and it is really steep as well. But yeah, you're right. It's a wonderful trail. Well done to have found it.
Yeah, yeah. And then another little detail that I love is as we come down from Taimoshan, we stay on the road because that keeps us off the Mackelhose. So you do the road all the way down to Route Twisk, and then you keep going down, and you go through. There's a little village below the Rotary Park called Chunlung, and as you go through that village, one of the first things that happens is that you go through this. The trail becomes quite narrow, and you end up basically going through a restaurant because the the kind of the seating area for the restaurant is kind of enclosed. But then on the other side of the path, they've got all their kind of places that the pots and pans get washed, and so there's often people preparing food there. So as you're just running along the trail, you basically can get some suai or
So,
pick it
so,
up as you run
so it
past.
literally goes through a restaurant. Is this the world's first ever trail that goes through a restaurant? It must be, right?
I think so, yeah, yeah. So it just feels very Hong Kong. Um, and then I've really loved exploring the last section in the New Territories from Chunwan to get to Shamchang. We do the Yun Chun Ancient Trail. So it's the trail that goes essentially from Chunwan to Yun Long, right, which is quite a long
Mm,
distance. Um, and so it starts off as quite a climb. It's about 300-meter climb. It's quite popular with people from Chunwan. So there's kind of young kids, and there's aunties, and there's dogs, and everyone. But it's great kind of just really nice vibe to the trail. And as you go up, and then you get up, the trail kind of goes kind of along through a kind of over a ridge, and then starts to head down towards Tinfusai, where the map goes. But there's another little detour you can do, which is to turn off to the right there to go up a hill up to Sheklong Kong, which is a magnificent hill, kind of that's looking up to Taimoshan, but also looking across to Lantau. You can see Castle Peak in the distance. Again, it's just a view of Hong Kong that I'd never really experienced before. But it's fantastic. And then as you come down from there, you get to this old abandoned school in Lin Fa Shan, which is now completely abandoned, overgrown. But there's kind of a famous, very Instagrammable concrete slide that's kind of just sitting in the middle of the forest, along with some old school buildings. So lots of things to explore. Right through.
I see on tinworthtrail.com there's pretty good descriptions of each section. It's divided into 10 sections. So I know some people have, or a couple of people have already run the whole thing in one go, I think, if that's right, Will. But the intention's not necessarily for people to do that. You can kind of pick and choose sections and do it bit by bit as you please.
I definitely think it'll be a small minority who will do it in one go. So Dina is the one person who's done it in one go that I know of, and that's, if you know Dina, that's not surprising because he's someone that does that kind of crazy thing. The only other people I know that have done the whole thing are Tim and I, and we've done it in sections. So we definitely set it up to have defined sections. You can just do, like, one section is going to be a nice hike, pretty decent run. We've also tried to, if each section is starred for difficulty, they tend to veer towards the 2 or 3 stars because there's not too many that are super easy. But that gives you some idea, so that if you want to start off with one that's a little bit easier, you can choose one. All the sections have a place to start and a place to finish, and so definitely for each section you can, if at the end of that section you want to stop, there's a pretty easy way to get out. It's not always stopping on a road, but it's always, well, at this point maybe there's a downhill 100 meters to get to the road or something like that. So it is definitely in bite-sized chunks that people can do, over the winter, do a section or two each weekend. It's certainly designed to be consumed in that way, and not necessarily that we expect people are going to run all 92 Ks in one go.
So it's not signposted physically on the trail like the official trails are, obviously. So how can people find their way?
Yeah, that was another really interesting thing that we were thinking about as we thought about, well, how would you do a 5th trail? Another challenge is, well, if we do this unofficially, we obviously can't put signs up everywhere. But of course, these days, with GPX, with people having smartphones and smartwatches, a lot of those problems become a bit more tractable. So essentially on tinworthtrail.com, you'll see GPX files and maps for individual sections and for the whole trail. And so you can download those onto your watch and follow your watch. You can also download those onto a number of apps. We recommend an app, I think Hong Kong Hiking app, which you can get for free from either the Mac Apple Store or the Google Play Store. But there's lots of other ones that will work with it too. So then, so basically you can follow the trail through the GPX. I think it's relatively straightforward. I think the early adopters will probably tend to be more trail runners who are probably more used to that. But we definitely hope to, help, provide any support that people need. If people are not used to doing this, we can give more, instructions. Because I think as long as you have a smartphone, it's relatively straightforward. And in fact, even though I have a smartwatch, I quite like doing it on the phone because it's actually just easier to kind of see where you're going. And as long as if you're not trying to do it at top speed, it's actually pretty kind of nice interface to use as well. So the other thing we have on the website are some links to both Strava maps and also these maps called FatMap, which is a really nice interactive. It's kind of a Google Earth type experience. So you can look at the section, you can look at it in 3D space, you can rotate it around, you can zoom in, and it's actually quite fun. You can kind of see, oh, I wonder where, like as I did that trail, I saw something to the left. I wonder where that goes, and you can see where that stream goes and kind of explore it, virtually. So the Fat Map's also a very, very nice interface.
Okay, very nice. And just if someone was looking to maybe sort of try one or two sections, which are the ones that you sort of like the most or would recommend for people?
I think if people are experienced trail runners and they like kind of some challenges, I would definitely recommend stage one. I think it's very iconic, very quite unusual for a lot of people. So that's starting right at the border. I think the climb up Taimoshan, especially with that this kind of right turn that then you end up going up, is I think people will be surprised what a difference it makes to their, like, everyone thinks they know Taimoshan like 100%, and I think they'll be quite surprised. It's like a new Taimoshan experience. I really like that. This Yuntun Ancient Trail. So that's section 6. It's not, a lot of it's concrete. There's lots of people around. It's not like an experience out in the wilderness, but it's just a really great vibe. Really different part of Hong Kong. Trails. Some great views. Quite varied too. Some really good trail as well. And then finishing at Rose Goose Restaurant. What can be better than that? And then that section coming out of Sunny Bay. So kind of section 7. You're basically heading up towards Tiger Head, Discovery Bay. And there's some really beautiful areas, not heavily traveled. Some great views out. But also quite challenging because you're doing a succession of hills and each hill gets a bit higher than the last hill. So, you conquer one, it doesn't seem, it's a bit steep, doesn't seem that high, but then the next one's another 50 meters higher, the next one's 100 meters higher than that. And you end up at Tiger Head, which is obviously, pretty good climb. Those would be some of the highlights for sure.
And I have to ask you, just we've got a Hong Kong Four Trails Ultra Challenge in Hong Kong. The challenge organizer, gentleman Andre Bloomberg, who I'm sure everyone knows, he's always looking for ways to make Four Trails harder. I mean, has he approached you? Could we be looking at an extra trail at some point in the future? Wild speculation.
Yeah. As soon as I started telling people that, I was kind of thinking about this 5th trail, instantly people were like, "Oh, it's going to be Hong Kong 5
Hong Kong
trails."
5 trails.
Having survived 4 trails, as you yourself have, John, I can certainly tell you that I have no desire for a change to Hong Kong
Yeah.
5 trails.
Wow.
And you would of course have to ask Andre about that. But my understanding is that there's no immediate plan to change the branding.
Everyone can rest easy for a little bit.
I think he's got plenty of ways that he can kind of tweak with his current setup. I think this is going to set up for a 5 and 5 challenge. So currently around Christmas time, people do 4 and 4. I've also done that. That was, I love that. I actually enjoyed that a lot more than 4 trails, getting a little bit of sleep each night. And I think that could work really well with this. It would be significantly more challenging to do a 5 and 5 with this trail. But I think that's a good place to start. And then if a few crazy people start doing that, I think, well, of course, you can have a look down the line. Maybe someone can finish 4 trails, under 60, and then at the post box tell Andre, no, to keep the champagne closed because I'm heading off to do the Tinworth Trail.
Wow, they would have everyone's eternal respect. Nice.
They certainly would. Well, I myself look forward to going out and doing it because, it's an extremely well mapped out route, I think. Taking in some of the very best trails in Hong Kong and an awesome way to honor, your late friend Nick Tinworth. So well done. I think it's a great initiative.
Can I just add a couple things? So we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. I'd encourage anyone that's interested to like those because they are a bit interactive, and we'll certainly be providing more information on those. We're organizing, for example, some recce's. So I'm off tomorrow with a group to show them sections 1 and 2. So if people are on the Facebook page, they can certainly see those and sign up for those. We're also going to be doing, so for example, obviously the Tinworth Trail needs a local name. So we have a couple of options, and we'll be putting a poll up on Facebook shortly. I guess that may have actually gone out by the time this is heard. That may have already happened. So there could already be a local name for it. And we would like to continue to develop the resources too. So we definitely plan to have a fully bilingual website. That probably will need some community support of people that would kind of help us to do that. But we do want to make sure that this is really serving, Hong Kong, rather than maybe just the English language, part of Hong Kong. So people that want to get involved and kind of just help us to, enrich the resources, make it more inclusive, more available for everyone, then yeah, we're definitely interested in hearing from people. And we really want this to be a community, project. So anybody that wants to get involved is going to be incredibly welcome. And yeah, just look forward to seeing everyone out on the Tinworth Trail.